Hey everybody, got a couple minutes to kill here. I gotta wait. I'm doing my governmental force feeding. They require me to take a 30-minute break every 8 hours, and it doesn't matter that I might take 2 or 3 15-minute breaks during the period of 8 hours. They don't care about that, government regulation. Government's here to make my job easier. So now I'm gonna have to sit here for 10 minutes, and then I gotta worry that I'm gonna have to run out of hours by 10 minutes trying to get back here to the point where I'm sitting right now, because I gotta go an hour up the road, and unfortunately that hour up the road is in Jacksonville. But government's here just to make my life easier. But anyway, just listening to Rush Limbaugh, it's something came up, and it's something that I've been wanting to do a video on, to make some comments on for a while. Entitlement reform. Now, there's this big argument out there that there's no such thing as entitlements. Again, because the government's here to help us, there are entitlements. There are entitlements because we're forced to partake into them. And since we're forced against our will to partake in them, we are entitled to those things, like Social Security. And when we get older, is it Medicaid? That's what our FICA tax is. We pay FICA tax, and we pay a Medicare tax or something, and we pay Social Security tax. But the Medicare tax is for our Medicaid. The Social Security tax is for our Social Security. Another entitlement that people like to say we're not entitled to, it's an invisible tax. When you get paid, there are things that are coming off your paycheck from the backside that, even at the time that you're hired, that's calculated into your hiring wage. For example, let's say your employer has to pay 7 cents an hour towards your, this is what I'm saying it breaks down to. I'm not sure the exact number, but I'm just saying by an hourly rate they figure out exactly what it's going to break down to. And one of the things is unemployment insurance. That is taken out of your paycheck before you're even hired. When you get hired, and you're hired and every raise you get is based on that unemployment, what they got to pay for unemployment. So let's say it's 7 cents. So you got hired at $7.70 an hour. You could have been hired at $7.70 an hour. Or say it's 15 cents an hour. Then you could have been hired at $7.85 an hour. Now I realize that that doesn't seem like a lot, but at the end of the week it does add up, and at the end of the month it adds up even more, and at the end of the year it's a nice little chunk of change. But at the same time, it's insurance that you're paying just by being hired. So, there's this big argument that people aren't entitled to unemployment. That is the biggest myth out there. This is one of them things where Republicans lose the argument, because we're not stupid. They think they're just as bad as the progressives. They think we're stupid, and we don't know how to do math, and we don't know how to think about, okay, this is what's going into our paycheck, and all this stuff on the backside. It's just like this whole argument about the cheap labor. Now, there's some truth to that, but Republicans again think we're stupid. Now, the fact of the matter is that we understand why people want illegal immigrants, because they're paying them off the books. One of the big things is they're not paying any of their contribution to our pay. That's another part of your pay that you're not seeing any of. For example, the payroll taxes. I mean, by the time all said and done, your average minimum wage worker is losing probably $4 or $5 an hour for all the government fees that are being paid on them. I mean, I can't remember all of them, and I don't know how much it's gone up. I know when I worked management, it was quite a bit back then, that I was surprised how much actually came out of people's paychecks on the backside that they never even knew about before they're even hired, and it's all part of their pay. And I'm sure it's even more now because of all the hidden taxes that are there that you don't see in your paycheck. Because like I said, when you're hired at even at minimum wage, say, what's minimum wage now? $7.75 an hour. So when you're hired at minimum wage at $7.75 an hour, what you don't know is the government has put tools in place to keep your wage suppressed. And so instead of making the, so even though you're hired at $7.75 an hour, your real wage could be $10.75 an hour or $11.75 an hour. That's your real wage. But all you see is the wage that the government's allowing you to see, which is the $7.75 an hour. That again is another one of them tricks that both progressives and Republicans are pulling on the rest of us because they think we're stupid. So next time someone brings up the entitlement argument, you know, these are just little points that are easy to bring up. I mean, there are some entitlements that, you know, they're not entitlements. Like the welfare, to a certain extent. I mean, the problem is that welfare is there to protect you because the problem is that not every employer is honest. Or indicate you might be working for a great employer, like say back in the day, Sam, what was his last name? Walmart. Back in the day, I mean, he was a great employer. He took care of his employees. Then the investors took the company over. And the company just gets run down into the ground. I mean, fortunately, Walmart's still doing all right today because they got so much political pull that, you know, they can use things like, they can push for things like minimum wage hikes to run small mom and pop businesses out of business. They get things like unfair tax breaks that the small mom and pop businesses in the same town don't get. So again, run mom and pop businesses, you know, so that's how Walmart keeps it. But, you know, you can still, you know, let's say somebody took over the business and it wasn't sold out to investors and it was sold out to a family member or a family member took over the business that was incompetent. So now you spent 15 years of your life working towards your retirement. You got 10 years before you're ready to retire, and Walmart goes bankrupt because of an incompetent son, or an incompetent daughter, or an incompetent in-law, whatever the case be. But somebody incompetent took over the company, and now all your years of dedication and hard work just went out the window, thanks to some moron's incompetent. So that's what welfare is there for. It's to help keep you on your feet and keep you from losing everything you've freaking been working for 15 years of your life for. But it's not meant to be on forever. You know, it's a safety net. I mean, in my opinion, you know, I don't know, in an economy like this where you got an incompetent president just doing everything he can to make it where you can't get a job, then obviously you need welfare longer. Back in the 90s, where we had a president who was willing to bend and come back to the middle and meet the Republicans when they came a little bit to the left, everything worked out good because then we got realistic welfare reform, and we also got job creation where jobs were actually being created because we had a president who was willing to work with the Senate and the Congress, and everything came together. But, you know, that's the point. That's the problem with the whole entitlement argument. You know, there's a myth to entitlement, but then there's also abuse of entitlements. I mean, I'm not saying that there's not abuse out there. That's not and I mean, people that live on the entitlements all their life, I mean, that's being abused in for sure. But you know, I just wanted, you know, especially for Republicans, because that's something I get so upset when I hear somebody say, oh, well, I'm a conservative, I'm a Christian, I'm this and that, and then they start bashing people for using a system that they're forced to pay into. If you're forced to pay into it, you're entitled to it by force, technically. So when someone says you're not entitled to unemployment, yes, you are entitled to unemployment because you pay into unemployment. That is part of your pay. That is all worked into your salary. That's the part of your salary that you never see. When someone says you're not entitled to Social Security, yes, you are, because you're forced by the government to buy that Social Security. When someone says you're not entitled to Medicaid, yes, you are, because you were forced by the government to pay into Social Security. You know, so Republicans need to come around and they need to, you know, and when they talk about doing reform, they got to do it in a realistic way, not just say, oh, well, you know, we're just going to end it. And then everybody that, you know, like me, I've been paying into Social Security now for I've been working since I've been working on the book since I was 14. I've been working since I was 8 years old. But I've been working on the book since I was 14. So I've been paying into Social Security for 28 years. I mean, I'm entitled to that. Don't take that freaking away from me. I paid all that money into that, and you're just going to take it and not let me see nothing from it? You're out of your mind. I pay into my 401k, and, I'm trying to do other things. But still, that I've been forced to pay into that is mine. When we talk about reforming it, we're talking about you have to do it on a scale where it's going to be, you've got this many years in it, and and however it's going to work, but there's got to be a scale there to the point where the person who's starting to work at the day of the reform, they're never going to see Social Security because they're going to be starting to pay into it at 14 years old. So someone who's 15, they paid into Social Security for a year. That money's going to sit somewhere, gain interest for all their working life, and they're going to see a little bit of something. Someone who's been working 2 years prior to the reform, and the further along you get, the more and more you see. But Republicans don't want to think like that because, that's too evenly handed. And Democrats ain't never going to let that, progressives ain't never going to let that happen because that's too evenly handed. Because let's face it, truth of the matter, progressives and Republicans, they have one thing in common. They want power and they want to divide us. So that's what the whole entitlement myth comes from.